Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Mr. Shank, coming to you live from Mayfield. In this video, I'm working on that Unit 1 study guide, and we're going to start on that page 1. And I'm going to break this apart so that way it's a little bit easier to do and understand. So for this first one, it says circle each number between 1.7 times 10 to the 0 power and 195%. So you're trying to figure out, okay, which of these four values would go between these two numbers. So let's go ahead and figure out what those two numbers are going to equal. So I'm going to type this into my Desmos calculator exactly how it looks. So I'm going to say 1.7, and I'm going to say times, and then 10, and I hit that A to the B button because I need to use that exponent. And so notice how the cursor goes up, and it's to the 0 power. So it's just multiplying it by 1. So I have, for this first value, is going to be 1.7. And then for my next value, I have 195. Again, you take that entire value, and you're saying, okay, I can't do percent of, I need to divide it by 100. So you need to make sure that you divide this entire value by 100 to change it to a decimal form. So I'm going to say that this value is going to be 1.95. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, which of these is going to be between these two numbers. A way to think about it is like this. You can say, all right, well, if I'm going to work on a number line, I can see that, hey, I'm working between these 2 points. So I'm going to say, all right, I have 1.7 is already there, and then 1.95, that's going to be real close to 2. And so what I can do is I can shade in. So let me actually do that. Let me shade in where my value is going to be. So I'm going to go from 1.7 all the way up just before, and when I stop, where that 1.95 would be at. So now let's convert these values to decimal form. Maybe we'll get a better idea of what we have. So let's go to clear out. I'm going to say, okay, I have, for this first value, I have 1.8, and I have times 10, and then to the first power. So that's going to be 18. So is 18 going to be anywhere on this number line? Not quite. So we're going to actually, we're not going to select that one. So we're not going to circle that. Or what about this next one? We have, let's see, we have 1 and, so I need to have plus, so this is positive, and I have 7 over 8. So for this value, I have 1.875. So now, would that be in between any numbers? Well, yeah, it would be greater than 1.7 and less than 1.95. So I am going to circle this second one. Let's go ahead and put a circle around that one. What about 18.5? That's already in decimal form. It's definitely not going to be on there. Again, these are real small numbers. Again, it's about, $1.50 to $2. Is $18 going to be in your price range? Not really. So you want to make sure you can think about it in terms of money if you need to. And for this last one, we're going to say, all right, for 7 over 4, I have that it's going to equal 1.75. And so I'm going to say that this value is 1.75. Is that between it? Yes, it is. It's greater than 1.7, but it's going to be less than that 1.95. So it's actually going to be right in the middle of 1.7 and 1.8. So I am going to select these two values. For number 2, on page 1, it says which statement is true, and it gives you a couple rational numbers that you're trying to compare. Okay, which one is less than, which one's greater than? So we're going to figure out, okay, which one of these is true. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these to actually be the same form. That way they're easier to compare. So I want to change the 7 over 8. I'm going to change that to a decimal. And so I'm going to say, okay, hey, I can rewrite the statement. I'm going to say that this first statement should be 0.09, is this greater than 0.87? Well, again, think in terms of money. Is 9 cents greater than about 87 cents? Definitely not. So we know that for sure is false. I'm going to go through each of these, so do not worry. For that next one, I need to change 6% to a decimal. How do I do that? Again, I take the entire decimal amount and I divide it by 100. So I have 0.6. Is that less than 0.9? Is 6 cents less than 9 cents? It is, so I can check that one off, but I want to make sure I check these other two before I move on. For that letter C, I have 7/8 again, which we already know is that 8.75 from before. However, I need to change that scientific notation, so I have 8.0 times 10 to the -3. So again, I hit that A to the B, and I say -3 power. Again, as long as it looks exactly how it says in the problem, you know you're good. So now I have this comparison. So I don't even have a penny on that right side, but it's saying that it's going to be greater than 87 cents. We know that's false. And for that last one, still using, we have that decimal value, and we can compare those two and say, hey, which one's greater? Well, it's definitely not going to be that smaller decimal. Even though there's more zeros, that's okay, because you're saying it's not even 0.1, it's less than, so we're going to say, hey, this one is also false. So make sure you're comparing those carefully for that number 2. In number 3 on page 1, it says which list is ordered from least to greatest, and make sure you're using that ordering paper or that graph paper like I have displayed. So how do we know what does it mean for it to be least to greatest? Well, that very simply, that means ascending order. So which of these is going to be ascending? So what I can do is I can just take these values that I have in original form, I write them on my left column right here. Again, then I want to change them to the same form. I want to change them to decimal form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Desmos calculator. I'm going to type in my values of my rational numbers. So I have 1, or I should say real numbers. We're not sure if they're rational, but we'll say for right now we have 1/3. That's a repeating decimal, but what I can do is I can fill in these boxes one at a time with one digit. So I'm going to say, hey, I have 0.3333. That keeps going. Again, if you need to, you can go outside of the box, but at least use one digit per box. So now for this next one, it says 3/5, so I'm going to say 3/5. What's that decimal? 0.6. So again, when I do this, you got to do 0.6. So I have 0.6. And now I'm not going to have 6's in here. What am I going to have? Well, since it just stops or terminates at the end of this 6, I can have zeros as their placeholders. So again, make sure that you are just saying, hey, I fill in zeros in these place value columns. Moving on, I have 30%, so I have to take 30 divided by 100 since it's 30%, so that's per 100. And so I'm going to say that's going to be 0.3. So I have 0.3. Again, notice how those decimals are already lined up, and each of those place value columns are lined up as well. Same kind of deal as the last one. I have to fill these in with zeros because my values are not repeating. So I have 0.3, and the rest are going to be zeros. All right, so now for the scientific notation, same kind of deal. Again, make sure you can either use your Desmos calculator, or if you wanted to, you can say, hey, I can do it like normal. So let me do Desmos first. So I have 3 and times 10, exactly. Let's back that one up. Let's do times 3 times 10. There we go. And then I hit that A to the B button for the exponent and -2. So now I need to have that value in there. I can also check it using our way that we showed. So if you wanted to, you can do it by hand. Let me fill these in first. If it lets me. Sure. Again, since it does not repeat, I have to fill it in with zeros after that last decimal value. So again, since it has that 3 right here and it does not repeat, I have to fill it in with just zeros. If you want to do it by hand, like I've shown before, again, I would circle the exponent. Since that exponent is negative, that means I'm going to be moving to the left. And so I'd take that decimal and move it 2 times, 1, 2, to the left. And I would include So that's my new decimal place, and I would include zeros where there are blanks. Same value, so we know we're good. All right, so now that we have those values changed over, what I can do is take and say, all right, I have my decimal place values, and I'm going in ascending order. And so what does that mean? That means from least to greatest. So I need to make sure that I'm looking for the smallest number. So again, you can line up your columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, hey, I line them up and I see, okay, all those zeros are tied. However, I can shift it over and say, all right, out of these, which one is the lowest? So out of these values, I have 0.3, 0.6, 0.3 again, and 0.0. So if I'm looking and comparing these four numbers, I know that that 0.0 is going to be the least. And so I'd say, all right, I have 0.03, which is that wonderful scientific notation. That's going to be my first value. And so now I can go ahead and just put a line through it showing that I used it. So I'm just going to put one line through it showing that I used it. Same kind of setup. I'm now looking of the ones remaining, which one is the smallest. So I'm still going to line it up like before. And so I'm going to say, okay, I have 0.03, 0.6, and 0.3 again. I have two of these values are tied. I have to shift over to the right one place value column. All right, so now which one's smaller? I have 33 cents or 30 cents. And so I'm going to say that that 30 cents is going to be my least remaining. So I'm going to say that 30 cents is the one that's next. And then I can go ahead and put a line through that one that I used. And so now we're going to keep going. Again, as always, feel free to pause, rewind, replay, all that good stuff. Of these two values remaining, which one's smaller? Again, if you want to use that the cover up like we've been doing, again, cover them up. Which one's smaller, 6 or 3? We know that 3 is smaller, and so we're going to say that in original form is 1/3, which means that our only remaining value that is left is that 3/5. So our greatest value is going to be 3/5. So now that we have that all straightened out, we are looking for the list that has the order like that. And so I'm going to say, all right, which one do I have? I have to have that that scientific notation first. And so I'm going to say, all right, the one that has scientific notation is going to be C. Same idea for the next one. For number 4, it says arrange these numbers in order from greatest to least. And again, that's now going to be a descending order. So again, I can take those values and I'm going to say, all right, if I have these values, I need to convert them to decimal. So that's what I'm going to do next. I have my scientific notation. For the first one, I'm going to do 9.1 times 10 to the second power. And I have my decimal here. And so I'm going to say, all right, I have 910, so I fill them in. Again, be mindful of where that decimal should be at. So I have 9.10, or excuse me, 910. For my next value, I have 918%. So I'm going to say, all right, I take that entire value in front of the percent sign and I divide it by 100 since it's per cent. So it's going to be 9.8. So 9.18. Again, make sure that you are using 1 digit per column. For the next one, it just has simple fraction. It's a rational number since it is a ratio or a fraction. So I have that over 2. That's going to be 915. So same kind of setup. I have 1 digit per column. I'm going to say it's going to be 915. And the last one's already in decimal form for us. And so very simply, just make sure those columns are lined up. All right, so now looking at these values, again, I changed these values to decimal form. And so now we can go ahead and line them up. Again, we start at the far left since that is showing our greatest value because we're descending. So we need to go from greatest to least. And so let me actually change this around a little bit. So I'm going to go greatest to least. So now I'm going to say, all right, if I have my values, I have a couple of values that are in the 900s, and so I need to go over one decimal place. And so I can see now, hey, out of those three, I have that this 920 is going to be first. So I'm going to say that that is going to be my greatest value. And so now I can go ahead and cross out the one that I used. And so I'm going to say, all right, I used that 920. And so I can say, all right, of the ones remaining, which one is going to be the greatest? So again, I line a month and I say, okay, I have 91 is tied for those two values. Shifted over one decimal place, I can see, okay, I have 910, 9, or 915. We would know that this value is going to be our largest of the three remaining, and so in original form is going to be that 915, excuse me, that original form is that 1,830 over 2. So again, same as before, as you use it, cross it out once. That way it's a little bit easier to see. And very simply, we already know, just comparing these two numbers, which one's bigger. We know that that scientific notation is going to be our next largest remaining. And finally, our percent is going to be the smallest number, or the least. So again, make sure you're seeing how these are ordered from greatest to least. If you want to use, A, B, C, D, or you can draw it like this, or you can use 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, just be mindful of what it's asking for. And so in the next one, it has for number 5 RNG's numbers from least to greatest. Again, that is ascending order, and we have those real numbers in there. And so what we're going to do, just like before, we're going to say, okay, I need to have these numbers in decimal form first. And so I take and I go for 65%, I have to change it to decimal form. So I divide it by 100. And so I have 0.65. So I have 0 and then 6 and then 5. Again, make sure you're only using one digit per column. For 2 over 3, I have that as a rational number because it repeats. Again, make sure you're filling in those decimal place columns very carefully, because I'm not going to have zeros after it. I'm going to have sixes after it. So again, make sure you are repeating those values. For the third one, it is that wonderful scientific notation. Again, since it's a negative exponent, that doesn't mean it's a negative value. It's just saying that we're going to move it decimal place one time to the left. So let's see, I have 6.04 and then times 10 to the negative 1 power. So I'm going to have to place those carefully. So I'm going to have 0 and then 0.6 and 0.4. Again, make sure you're using that one digit per column. Again, since there's the decimal terminates, I know that I can put a 0 at the end of this one. And then for that last one, again, it's a little Greek letter for us. That's that wonderful irrational number pi. And so again, you can kind of fill in the numbers as needed. So I can have 3.14, and then I have 1.5. Again, if you want to put more decimal places, as long as you are lining them up. All right, so now that I have these all in decimal form, I need to now order them. And so let me shift this over. I'm going to say that I'm talking about ascending order, which is again that least to greatest. So let's try that again. I have that least to greatest, so I'm looking for my smallest number now. And so as I line up my columns, I see, okay, of these values, which one is smallest? Well, I have a couple of numbers that have tied. I'm going to have to shift it out to that next place value column. And so I can say, okay, of these prices, like we can say, always work with money, of these prices, which one is cheapest? So I would say that, hey, 60 cents is the cheapest, so I know that this is going to be my smallest value out of these remaining. So I'm going to say, okay, I take and cross out the one I used. Again, I had to put that original form in there, and so I'm going to say, in original form, I have that scientific notation is going to be my smallest value of these ones that are here. Same kind of setup. Again, cover up the ones that you have. Since it's still tied between these sixes, I have to shift one decimal place column till the right. Now I have 65 cents or 66. We know that 65 cents is less than that 66 cents. And so in original form is that 65%. Again, as you use it, cross it out once and have your ordering on the right side. So again, I have my first value, I cross it out. I have my next value, I cross it out. So now for this next one, again, just compare very simply which one is smaller, 0.6 or 3.1. We know that the number that is not a whole number is going to be smaller. So we know that this 2/3 is going to be our smallest of the remaining. And so we're going to say in original form, we have that 2/3. And so we say, all right, we have our 2/3, we used it. And now we can say, all right, I have my pi remaining. And so I'm going to has that one as my greatest value. So again, from least to greatest, you have your order of values. Make sure you are ordering those carefully. And so now for this next one, again, make sure that you're seeing this carefully. So it says, what are the 2 square roots of 36? And so you want to make sure you're seeing carefully. Again, you have these statements. We know that, hey, 6 times 6 is 36. However, we also have that -6 times -6 is 36. So that means when we take the square roots, again, since there's 2 square roots, we have to have both positive and -6. For this last one, it says between which 2 integers is negative square root of 133. So again, make sure that you are seeing how this works. We're going to have to say with the values here, what I can do is this. I can use that wonderful square roots list, and I can move it up and down as needed. So again, notice how this works. We're looking for the 2 perfect squares that this number falls between. So I'm going to say that, hey, for this number here, again, I'm looking at that square root. And so where does this square root fall between? Well, it's going to go not between 64 and 81. It's going to go between, keep scrolling, it's going to go between 25 and 36. And so what I have to do now is I can say that these 2 perfect squares are going to be the ones that this value falls between, but I'm looking for those 2 consecutive integers. That means they're back to back. They're right next to each other on the number line. And so I would say that, hey, those 2 consecutive integers are -5 and -6. So for this one, it is going to be -5 and -6. Again, make sure you are seeing how I do these. Again, take your time as you're moving through them. And as always, super slam the subscribe button.